Alright guys, we are back, and let's see here real quick. The chat is now officially working again. I had to go back through my restream settings and essentially deactivate all of my streaming accounts and then add them back in, but that's what it took, and now the chat is working. So for people that are watching on YouTube or Twitch and people are kind of asking questions or communicating, you guys can now communicate back and forth. It kind of ties everything up together nice and neatly. I am Follygon for people that are new and just coming in here. I was streaming earlier today and took a little bit of a break. My throat, I'm gonna be coughing maybe a little bit more than I should be, but my throat's been acting up. I have had a cold for a little while now, but feeling a little bit better after a recommendation from one of the people joining us on the stream said grab some warm tea. I did that. And now my throat is feeling a little bit better, you know, after a break and everything. But we are back at it, back inside of ZBrush here. We're working on this Mercy sculpt by Zeronis. I went ahead and moved my chat window down to the bottom left-hand corner, my camera, simply because I am so used to putting images up here in the top right-hand corner to reference that it just makes it easier for me. And in the future, I'm not going to be hiding stuff behind my picture so much. Also over here, you guys can see that the chat window is up. Rohit is back with us, so thanks for joining us. You can see his message has popped up here. Hey Rohit, welcome back. We are going to be working more on this character, but during this time, I would not only like to just work on this character, but I'd also like to take some time to take some requests, or if there's something specific that people would like to maybe learn more about, if there's anything that I can elaborate on and talk about during this time, I would love to do that. We have some time here. Excuse me. The talking is what does it. But we have some time here to kind of play around. This is a pretty chill stream. I'm not going crazy with this, trying to speed through it or anything. So we have some time to answer questions and do that sort of thing. So if you got them, ask them. And again, if there's anything specific you want to see, we can maybe take a look at some of that. I was thinking about combining some meshes here, but the more I look around, the more I think we're good. Really, I want to do some final tweaking to this and mess with the mouth a little bit more, and possibly some off of stream just so I can work much faster as well. We'll see. But I wanna finish this up and get ready to move on to the next thing. Thank you all for the people that are coming back and joining us. It seems like, let's see here. Rohit says, 12:30 a.m. I am sleepy, but this stream is worth watching. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sorry that you are a very sleepy boy right now. I am also a sleepy boy. My internal clock, my circadian rhythm, whatever you want to call it, is all screwed up from the trip to Italy I took last week. It was a lot of fun. Good time, but at the same time, you know, it's rough on you when you go, let's see, 6 hours back and forth across 6 different time zones. It really wears on you. But yeah, it's going on 2 o'clock here where I am. I've been getting up and streaming pretty early simply because it's the times that work out for my schedule pretty well. Before I left, I asked some of you guys what would be some good times to stream for you, and it seemed like there was kind of an array of different answers, and nothing particular that was like leaning one way or the other. It seems like it just really kind of depends on where you are and if you're able to make it or not. And it's not a huge deal if you're not able to make it to the stream. I totally understand. Everybody's busy. Everybody's got their own stuff they got to work on and do. And for me, being on the East Coast in the Cincinnati area, I have to make time when I can, and I can't always stream super late into the night for my time zone, but you know, I'm gonna try to do that a little bit more frequently for us, so that we can kind of try to hit everybody as much as we can. That being said, it's still tough to try to, you know, make time to get everybody in. So if you can pop in even for just a little bit, love to chat, hang out, and work on some ZBrush stuff. I'm glad you could join us, Rohit, and join us for our second stream today as well. It's been a while since we've done this. Akhenaden, or Ramses, that's right, Ramses is back as well. Hey man, welcome back. Thank you. I appreciate it, Ramses. It's been a while. I think you were on the last stream there right before I headed off to Italy. It's good to have you back though. Welcome to the stream. Greatly appreciate you stopping in and hanging out. Hope you're doing well. As you can see, we have our nice little chat window hanging out over here, so if somebody, it looks like everybody's on YouTube right now, but if somebody pops in over on Twitch or on a different channel, we can get them in here as well. I think the only other one that I have set up currently is Part2, but I am not a huge fan of Part2 overall. It doesn't seem like there's typically many people on Part2, and the people that are on Part2 seem to be maybe interested in a different kind of art a lot of the time, if you're picking up what I'm putting down. We are kind of leaning towards that though with our large-breasted Mercy over here, so maybe we kind of fit in with the Part2 crew today. No offense to the Part2 crew. I think it's a great service, but again, it just doesn't seem like there's typically a lot of users on there, at least during my time zone and when I'm awake. So I'm just kind of going around doing little tweaks, little fixes to our character here. Like I was saying before, if you are kind of just now joining us here, I need to fix this. If you are kind of just now joining us, I'm going to be continuing to work on Mercy here. Having some fun with this, making some little tweaks and changes. I'm definitely a lot more happy with the mouth that we have now, but I would like to improve that a little bit more if I can. So continuing to work on this, and if you guys have anything specific that you guys want to see, maybe if you have some questions or anything pertaining to a process that I could show you, we could play around with that. We can also just do some little quick doodles and sketches and play around. We can do whatever we want. Today's a little bit of an in-between larger scale projects. This was more of a man, I need a drink. And I meant alcohol by that. I mean, I need a drink. Now that would probably be terrible for my throat. Kind of in between projects right now. So this is more of just kind of a sketch, whereas for the next character we hope to do a full character, maybe participate in the ZBrush art war if you guys are familiar with that. Where is it? Here we go. Art War 2 is going on right now. Just started. When did it start? I'm not sure. It started recently, within the past couple days. Created December 11th, so about a week ago. If you guys remember the first Art War or not, you can see a lot of the characters here. Go check out those forum posts if you have yet to see that. I believe it was fantasy versus sci-fi last time. This time it is light versus dark. Whew, pretty interesting. I think there's a lot of different ways you could take that. I think the theme last year might have been better because it was a little more concrete, whereas this is light versus dark is pretty ambiguous. It's kind of a good thing, but at the same time I feel like it's a little too open-ended, but you know, that's my opinion. Who knows? I think we're gonna see some great art out of that either way. I'm excited to see those and possibly participate here if I can. We will see how the stars align, though. I have some concepts in the work right now, and depending on how those turn out and where I can apply those, we will see what will happen. But yeah, I'm excited for that, and there'll be some more info on that later. If you guys remember me talking about previously, the podcast that myself and my friend who is a traditional sculptor, a ceramicist, his name is Daryl, we've done some recording for that, proud to say, and we've both been working on that little project, a little bit of an experiment to play around with and have some fun with. It's going to be called Art Anonymous. It's a little bit of a play on kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. So it's we call it our AA meeting when we get together, and we hope to kind of bring some of you guys into that. But anyway, the first episode for that is going to go up on Thursday. It's going to be posted most likely here on my YouTube channel. If not, I will provide a link or some kind of ping or notification on my social media to that. Either way, I'll probably be doing that. But yes, I'm very excited for that project. Hope you guys are excited for that as well. We're going to try to release those every Thursday. Not positive on the time yet, but be on the lookout for that. Again, I'm really excited for it, and I hope you guys are too. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Along with that, real quick, the only other thing I have to say about that project is that if you guys do listen to it or check it out, we're looking for different topics, different questions, anything like that. I've already asked a couple people just on social media. I just did like a random post, hey, send me your ideas for questions or topics or anything like that. So if you guys have any topics, questions, or anything that you think might be interesting for our AA meetings, I would love for you guys to send those my way in whatever way you can, even posting them right now in the chat or whatever. But the best way to do that is probably to comment on the actual video when that goes up. And that's an audio only thing, but we're going to be putting it up here on YouTube simply because to do a podcast, the hosting fees for that are a little bit outside of what we're looking for right now, until it becomes, maybe if it develops into more of a concrete thing, we can experiment and look into that. But at least for the time being, like I said, a little bit of an experiment to play around and just kind of talk, and like I said, we're having fun with it, so hopefully you guys will as well when we get into that. Let's see here. Ramsey says, if possible, could you show how to make and apply textures on objects? Absolutely, we can look at that. It's actually pretty simple inside of ZBrush. I want you to be a little bit more specific with that though, because you can take something like Polypaint, and as long as you have UVs on it, you come down into your texture map, go to Create, and just click New from Polypaint, and it will create the texture map for you. So if you're talking about textures in that respect, maybe you're talking about textures as in sculptural textures, doing some stuff with your light box and applying those textures through that, kind of projecting them on your mesh. If you want to be a little bit more specific with that question, of course we can do that. Yes, yes. Rohit says, I checked your ZRemesher and Dynamesh video. Didn't help with polypainting, but did help with ZRemesher. Yeah, if you're kind of new, or you still have some kind of big questions about ZBrush, I think that's that tutorial series, How to ZBrush, that's on my YouTube channel, is a great place for you to get a lot of those questions answered quickly. The videos are pretty short. There's a bunch of them, and they cover all the basics you need to know to get up and running inside of ZBrush as quickly as possible. That is the exact reason I made those videos. I made them for you guys, so please use them, and I hope that they help you out a lot. That was the intent of those. May we get a texturing video in the future? Again, you guys are going to have to be a little bit more specific with texturing. If you're talking about texturing inside of ZBrush, if you're talking about texturing is a divisive word. It could have multiple meanings. You could say that there's texture applied to this, but it's not. It's just polypaint. Polypaint that I can toggle on and off at will just by doing that. And now you can see we just have the sculpture here. So it's pretty easy for me to toggle any of that on and off. And this is my personal material here. Let's go ahead and toggle on everything. This is my Follygon clay material, black and white, and then I have, of course, you know, my clay colored material as well. And I can toggle all that back on. But let's see here. Poly painting. Rohit says poly painting, and let's see, Ramses was asking about some texturing as well, so not sure if he means the same thing with that. But we can absolutely look at some poly painting. I think it would be cool to look at some poly painting right now while we're just kind of hanging out here. A great poly painting tutorial. Let's see here. Yes, this one. I do know of a great poly painting tutorial, now that you ask, that I have made. Yes. I actually, this is a tutorial that I'm fairly proud of because I think it's a very quick and concise one. If I can find it real quick here, it's how to paint eyes. How to paint eyes. It's a 5-minute long video. It covers pretty much everything you need to know about painting eyes in a stylized manner, and even in a realistic manner. It's pretty simple. Essentially, you start with the eye mesh here. You apply your material, which in this case is a toy plastic material, and then from there you start just creating some masks for the overall iris and pupil and where that's going to be, and I mess with some of the sizing there. It's pretty simple, but we can kind of go over this if you guys want to, and I can talk more in depth about some of these steps. But I just apply a quick black color there, and we can step through, and I show some different methods for applying poly paint to color the eyes, add some different colors and shades, and do some shadowing on the eye, which is of course very important. Eye tends to be a little bit more brighter on the bottom, and you can see that being illustrated here, as well as adding in the shadow that the eyelid would cast onto the eye. So all of that is covered in this video. in detail in 5 minutes. It's a really quick video. I'm actually pretty proud of that video, just because it's one of my more concise and easier to follow tutorials. I cover everything, no matter what user interface you're using, you can follow along with this. So how to paint eyes, ZBrush tutorial, me, Follygon, 5 minutes long. Go check it out. That's a good place to start. And that's specifically for eyes, but again, I think we can kind of hang out here and cover some more stuff with some poly painting. So if there's anything specific you want to see, we can do that here. Let's see. Ramsey says, no, not painting. No, not poly painting. I mean like 3D textures, for example, wood texture or rock texture. And then Ramsey says patterns. Let's grab a sphere and turn off perspective. And I'll have to make that a polymesh 3D. I'm just going to quick save. Don't want to lose that gal there. So go ahead and grab a sphere, Ramses, if you're at home following along, or anybody else, and we can kind of play around here. And let's see, a wood texture or a rock texture. Now, those are two very different textures, so it's a little bit of some problem solving. Everything in ZBrush is problem solving. Raphael says, hey everyone. Hey Raphael, welcome to the stream. So it is problem solving, that's right. Everything in ZBrush is problem solving. No matter what you're attempting to sculpt, no matter what you are attempting to create, box model, what you're attempting to texture. So of course the first step is to gather references. So let's go ahead and just start by sculpting a rock. I think wood and rocks can be pretty easy, but of course reference is very important for those things. So let's just block out a quick shitty rock here. I'm just using the trim dynamic brush and trying to create some interesting planes on here and create a bit of a rock shape. And we can dynamesh and play around with this, and here we go. I am going to use the clay buildup brush, if you guys are familiar with this one. The clay buildup brush is like the clay tubes brush, but you can continually build up and destroy features as you see fit. So I just quickly started off by trimming off some faces with a trim dynamic brush, and now I'm just kind of being pretty rough and ready with this clay buildup brush and just going to town here. Adding in some texture and form where I see fit, and attempting to add some visual interest to our rock. And I'm not kind of doing this in any particular fashion. I'm just kind of looking at the shape that I'm building and trying to find some interesting forms that we can maybe capitalize on here. Now for a rock, one thing that is important is reference, of course, which we're not using, but you should use reference while you're sculpting a rock. There's a lot of different types of rock, a lot of different kinds of minerals. You always have to start, of course, with why, the story of whatever you're sculpting. That requires thinking a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit. So some questions you have to ask if you're sculpting a rock is, where is the rock? How big is the rock? Is the rock in a place where it would be weathered? Is it a cliffside? Is it a pebble? Is it smooth? Is it something that you might find in a forest, in a desert? These are all questions that you have to consider before you just say, I'm going to sculpt a rock. And you can kind of dive headlong in, but it is very important to think about these things. So let's think about our rock here. We could say it's a smooth stone in a river, but I think Ramses wants to see some texture on this rock. So we can try to say this is maybe a rock that might fit in your hand or something like that. It's a little weathered, and we can kind of play around with that idea. So I'm just using some combinations of brushes here. The pinch brush, namely, was what I was just using to kind of solidify some of these forms. So I'm just going to kind of round this out as it's a stone, a big rock that I want to hold in my hand, maybe. Something that I might find not in a river, but maybe close to a riverbed or something like that. So it does look like it's received some weathering. So we can answer some of these questions in the back of our head while we're working here and try to play around with some of these different ideas. And again, looking up reference for this stuff is important. So let's head on over to Google Images and grab some pictures of some rocks. Rock. And of course, Dwayne pops up immediately. This is the kind of rock that I was kind of picturing in my head. Not the smooth cue ball, but one of these two, somewhere between these two, are pretty good examples. This is what? Is this limestone, or I'm not positive off the top of my head. I don't think it's incredibly important what kind of rock this is. But either way, again, lots of different kinds of rocks, right? You have to decide on what you are aiming for here. Now I could try to replicate this exactly, but I don't think that's going to be what we do here. So I want to get some flat surfaces, some different elevation levels, and we can play around with that here. So let's do that next. So back to the trim dynamic brush. What we're going to do here to maybe create a little bit of this shape is create some masking. So some interesting shapes here. So get some masking going on, and I'm just going to kind of pull that shape up and kind of taper it down on one side so that we can have that fit with our build up here on the rock shape. And just kind of play around with this. The clay tubes brush and the clay buildup brush are great brushes just for sculpting in general. They're good for building up texture and form though as well. So that was one of your questions that you had there. So we can kind of play around with this and maybe get some visual interest here going on, and maybe make this a little bit of a harder turn there and play around with some of those features. And we can get maybe a little bit of a harder transition on one side. Can do some little tugging in with your transpose tool. You don't have to do it that way. Of course, you got the trim brushes like we were playing with earlier. Those are great for all this kind of stuff. And of course, that clay buildup brush to get some little underhangs in here and stuff like that. So just maybe subdividing a couple times and really kind of trying to add some interest, visual interest here with some textures, which is that key word that we're looking for, right? Texturing. And we can play around with all of this. The How to ZBrush video series here on my YouTube channel, where is it? How to ZBrush. 13 videos. The objective of that, I've said in the past, is to get you up and running in ZBrush as quickly as possible. And that is a little bit of a lie. That's not the only intent of that course. Another one of those intentions there, I would say the main intention is to give you a tool set. And the objective of ZBrush and my How to ZBrush series, the place where you want to be, is not at a place where you're asking, how do I sculpt a rock, or how do I sculpt wood texture or rock texture? I think those are bad questions. I think what the questions you want to be asking are more so, how do I sculpt wood texture and rock texture with the tools that I possess? So if you're asking those questions right now, I would say that you need to work on your understanding of the tools inside of ZBrush first, which is exactly what this video series is meant to do. It's just 13 videos, get you up and running in ZBrush real quick, and that is the intent there. And you can't really cut any corners with ZBrush. It's not like every other software. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to learn, and it's not just the software that you have to learn, but you also have to learn how to sculpt, and that's a whole nother animal in and of itself. So going back to, it's a bad question, not because it's just inherently a bad question. The question you should be asking is, how do I do that with the tools that I possess? Because there are a billion ways to do everything in ZBrush, and what you have to decide is the best way that you can do it with the tools that you currently possess. I don't know how to sculpt everything imaginable in ZBrush. That's crazy, right? That doesn't make any sense. Why would anybody know how to sculpt everything? That's not the point. The point is, much like nobody knows how to draw everything. You break things down into like primary forms and shapes, and you have tools at your disposal and skills at your disposal, and you use those tools and you use those skills to interpret what you're trying to accomplish here and try to accomplish that as best as you can with those tools. Now, I think that's a little bit of a hard lesson to learn, and it definitely took me a while to really kind of understand what that means. It's something you kind of have to think about for a while, and it does take a while to actually come to a point where you can kind of accept that and try to, build those problem-solving skills. That's really what it comes down to, I think. And once you get to that point, once you get to a point where you can build up your problem-solving skills, you'll no longer be asking questions like, oh, how do I sculpt rock texture? How do I sculpt wood texture? You start just saying, well, I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to problem solve and figure it out right now. The way I'm sculpting this rock, I've never sculpted a rock exactly the way I'm doing this right now. And of course, the shape and everything's different, but the combination of brushes and different strokes that I'm doing here, these different techniques, these are all new. I'm just kind of problem solving on the fly. And that's really what it's all about. It's just kind of having that base understanding and moving forward from there. But again, it does have to stem from that understanding of some of these base tools inside of ZBrush. And of course, you have to know how to make a wiener with your mask tool. That's also very, very important. A lot of people overlook that. Where do you get the idea of using Ryan Kingsline anatomy model as a 3D reference? That reference idea was over 9,000. Nice, nice. If you don't know what Rohit is talking about here, if you go into your Lightbox tool with ZBrush, with your installation of ZBrush, comes this a lot of different tools in here. If you haven't gone through these, you're probably new to ZBrush, but if you come here, this Ryan Kingsline anatomy model. Ryan Kingsline is he's very good he's very knowledgeable in anatomy, and he's a very good sculptor. And I'm not, well, actually, can I load this in really quick? Easily enough. Yes, I can. So this here is Ryan Kingsline's anatomy model. It is écorché or écorche. I have a male and a female here on my desk. Here is the male version. I'm not going to show the female as well. It's pretty much the same thing, but flesh on one side, écorche on the other, or écorché, however you correctly say that. It doesn't really matter though. Using this as a study reference is a very good idea. Just being able to natively in ZBrush, turning on and off perspective, looking in here and working with this tool is very valuable. Not only that, every muscle is named in here, even the pieces, the fat pads here. So posterior fat pads that I just selected. So breasts, which are fat pads as well, and I think there's even some fat in the face up here. But yes, very, very valuable tool. Use this, guys. Let's see, that was Rohit who asked that. He knows that because if you watch my stylized female face tutorial videos, in the first one for how to sculpt a head, I reference this model, obviously here, and talk about where you can find it and how you can use it to study. You also got the skeleton here, which is very valuable as well. This is all to anatomical proportional correctness, but there is always a flaw in referencing someone else's work. It's always better to reference the real thing, but it can also be valuable, I think, to look at something like this. So that's where that is. Check it out, learn from it, crash ZBrush, and let's look at what some other people are saying in here real quick while I reload ZBrush back up. Not familiar with ZBrush terms I use. I'm talking about applying an alpha or a seamless pattern. Benoit Barines, welcome to the stream. Hello, hello. Glad you could join us here right as ZBrush crashes. So ZBrush, thankfully, it's pretty good at recovering. See how it says recovered right there? That is my recovered ZPR, ZBrush project. That is the one that I want, at least for now. You don't want to save as ZBrush projects typically, though. That's a terrible idea. Let's clear that out. And actually, let me import our image back in here real fast, just so we got that. Episodes, Mercy Nurse, references. There we go. And pop that in. Scale that down. It's not a good stream unless ZBrush crashes at least once. All right, back to our rock, our Dwayne the Rock Johnson here. So back to kind of what we were talking about. You know, it's just problem solving, right? That's what it all is. That's what it all comes down to at the end of the day, every time. And learning how to work with what you got. It's not an easy thing. Not an easy thing at all. And I can just kind of come in here and add some visual interest. And I can sculpt some more with my clay build-up brush, as I think this is just a great brush for creating these kinds of forms and textures. Not only is this great for creating textures and forms, but we'll take a look here in just a second at another great tool for doing this. And I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with this tool. All right, so down here in your tool palette, we can find surface noise. Surface noise is great for getting some repeatable textures and repeatable alphas. If you load in a repeatable texture in here, you can import it and use it to create some patterns. You can also convert it into an alpha. That's what that little checkbox down there is for. By default, the noise is kind of generic here. I can turn the strength up and you can see what that'll look like. Got a little bit of a pre-visualization. I can also increase the scale here of the noise, and you can see what this is going to look like between those. If I click OK, it will pre-visualize it now onto my surface. So as you can see there, I can toggle that on and off. If I click Apply to Mesh, though, it will apply that to the mesh as best as it can with the resolution that you have. So it doesn't look exactly the same, obviously, because we have a certain poly count that can't accurately get that exact detail in there. You can see that the resolution is not high enough. If I subdivide up, though, maybe once, we can get a little bit closer, and as you can see there, that we did get a little bit closer. And this is pretty dirty, pretty messy, and pretty repetitive. So if that's not exactly what you're looking for, just the basic noise, we can turn on our noise plugin here and find a multitude of different objects to work with. We have brick, turbulence, stripes, erosion, granite. We can play around with erosion a little bit and click and turn that on, and then I can come in here and start messing with the scale of our noise and the strength of our noise. And you can see we already start to get some pretty interesting shapes here. And you can turn that to be positive or negative, depending on what you want to do. Either way, we can kind of turn that on and get a little bit of a visualization of what that looks like. You can also mask parts off with this tool. So by masking that off, I can apply this erosion to only one part of the mesh, or selectively where I want it. So there's a lot of power here with this tool. Rohit says, most of the artists I know have at least one common hobby: photography, watching anime, and sketching. What is yours? I wouldn't call watching anime a hobby. That's pretty funny. What is my hobby? I have a lot of hobbies. I enjoy going to the gym and riding a bike at nights. I enjoy watching anime. Not a huge fan of photography. Sketching I don't do very often. I used to be really big into gaming, but not so much anymore. Got a little expensive, and the game market is a little oversaturated. Myself and my roommate play Super Smash Bros. Melee quite often, so we have a lot of fun doing that. That's one of the things that we do for fun around here. But yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of hobbies, like I said. So looking here, you can see me messing with my noise scale. If I drop that down, we can get a little bit more finer noise. I like to increase this, bump it up, so you can see we're getting some nice rock texture there. And this is, of course, your noise, and then your plugin here. So this is the erosion here that I'm messing with, so I can increase or decrease that as I see fit. I'm going to increase it a little bit, try to get something interesting. And for the mix basic noise, as you can see here, I can slide between these two, mix that basic noise in with the noise that I'm already applying there, and we can play with that. Let's just click OK. And with our basic shape here, you can see that we can generate some noise relatively quickly. Let's apply that to the mesh and just see what we get. So this is starting to look a little messy. So maybe you wouldn't do exactly this combination of noise that I applied here, but I think you guys start to get the idea really quickly here with these few methods that we have played around with rather quickly. So I hope that was helpful for you guys, but more so I hope that my words about just kind of problem solving were even more helpful for you, because I really do stand by that. I believe that ZBrush is a sculpting program, and sculpting is very, very, very hard. So don't feel bad if you suck at it, because I'm definitely no master by any means. Trying to improve every day myself and trying to help out you guys as much as I can along the way. So don't take my words as Bible. Everything I say isn't exactly true, and I can only base my responses to you guys and my somewhat helpful tips off of what I've learned in the past from other users, or just from mainly from problem solving myself and practicing. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys, but we can go ahead and move on here and keep looking at this gal. So the live streams are so much fun, more fun than class lectures. I seriously hope that you're not skipping your class lectures to hang out here on stream. That would be very good. Unless, of course, it's a ZBrush lecture that you were going to go to, then by all means, stay here. I'll teach you everything you need to know. You don't need to go to your professor. What's your professor going to know about ZBrush? Come on. Unless, of course, you go to Gnomon, then go to your classes. Yeah. They probably know quite a bit more than I. That sounds like a good idea, going to your lectures. I'm just kind of trying to really pinch that crease there, partially to hide the mess of geometry that we have, and partially to make that look a little bit better. That is much too strong of a subduction there, subducting under the upper lip. I want to try to change that, even it out from one side to the other. These lips have been causing me a headache and a half. If you guys were on the stream earlier, I'm just not as happy with them as I am with the other facial features, and I think a lot of it does have to do, or at least a little bit has to do, with the poly paint that is applied to them. So we might be, turn off Z ad there. We might be playing with that a little bit here too. We can play around here. As I mentioned earlier, we can always just hide everything but our lips to make it a little bit easier to paint on them. Ramsey says, very helpful. Thanks, I'll try it out. Sounds good to me. Rohit says, he, as in your professor, knows nothing about ZBrush. He is a Mudbox fan. Never trust a Mudbox fan. That's what I've always said. Can't trust them. Nope. Only trust the ZBrushers. That's not true. Not entirely true, at least. I definitely prefer ZBrush over Mudbox, and it is absolutely a better sculpting tool than Mudbox, objectively. Not opinion, but objectively, it is better. Okay, now for our lip roonies. A little bit of lightening here. You know what? Let's try this. Material. Toy plastic is probably a bad idea. Let's start with that, though, and see if we like this on the lips. We're already at 4 million polys. We're a little high. But yes, you can apply different materials to different parts of your mesh, much like what I'm doing now. I tend not to do it just because you can't typically blend between those two materials extremely well. Tends to be a pretty hard transition. You can kind of see that here, but we might. I want some reflection on these lips. I want them to look a little bit more glossy, like they do in the reference. This is a technique. Well, actually, what we can do is take our Skin Shade 4 material. I might have a better idea than what we're doing right now. Take our Skin Shade 4 material and use that as a base to modify what we have here, and then we can add some glossiness on top of that. We might try that, depending on how crappy this looks. And I'm gonna guess pretty crappy, but who knows. It's just a really sharp transition, and it makes it really obvious that something a little bit weird is happening here. I can fix this in post without any problems, but still it's a little frustrating. I can kind of blur these. So we get a little bit of glossy reflection there on the lips. Again, I can blur those in post, like I said. So, and I'm talking about the transition that's occurring there. But I don't know. I'm not sure yet if I like that. Leaning towards no. The stylized head series was awesome, man. Maybe one day you do a live stream making a stylized male head from scratch. Have done that in the past. If you look through my old live streams, you'll find some videos in there for some male heads as well as some of my other videos. There's some male heads in there. Lechar, Johanatin, I'm going to call you John, Johnny Boy, says, hi, welcome to the stream, John. Glad you could join us. Hope all is well with you. We are working on a concept by Zeronis up here, playing around with this. I've been playing a little bit with the lips and just kind of playing with those for the last little bit. We just got done kind of playing with sculpting a rock. Not a very good rock, mind you, especially not with that color on it. But we were playing around with doing some texture and some surface noise and seeing what that looks like very quickly, as well as using our clay buildup brush, which is just an amazing tool in my opinion. You can really create some interesting forms and shapes with it very quickly and have a lot of control over that. John says, can you guys help me? I've started using ZBrush and I feel like I never have enough topology. Should I increase Dynamesh resolution or ... question mark. It's hard to say. It's very dependent on what you are working on, what you are doing. But if you're new and you have some questions about Dynamesh and ZRemesher, I highly recommend. I feel like a broken record at this point this stream, but check out my How to ZBrush series here on YouTube, And the honestly, I would go through them all, but if you watch video number 5 here, I specifically talk about Dynamesh, and specifically about when you need to use it, when you need to increase resolution, and when you can switch back and forth between each. And in some more videos here, I go over projection and some other stuff. I highly recommend you check out that series. A lot of the beginner questions that we've seen today can all be answered in that series and more. The objective of that series is to kind of get you up and running as quick as you can with the tools that you need here in ZBrush to create anything you can imagine. At least that's the intent. Whether you watch them all or not, though, is up to you entirely. And I have a feeling that many of you will not. People tend to be very a la carte with their educations, which is a good and a bad thing. Bad, of course, because you miss many fundamentals, which is the most important part of ZBrush. It's really all you need to know. And it's good because, you know, if you have a question, you can hopefully find that one specific answer that you're looking for. But a lot of the time, I think it can be pretty detrimental to your education as a whole if you continue to a la carte yourself without getting a really good foundation of those most basic things. I think I like the lips more now than I did previously, for sure. I think one more thing I want to change here before we attempt to maybe look at something else. If anybody has a particular request or question or something that they want to look at, we can do that. But let's play with this real quick. I'm gonna try to thin out my my upper lip here a little bit, and hopefully my materials don't get screwed up too much. ZBrush can be a little finicky with that kind of thing. Specifically, I want to narrow the lips as they come in towards the corners. Let's see here. What do you think about Blender? Have you ever used it? I have used Blender. I don't use it very often, but it's a free tool, and it's a very good free tool. That is what I think about Blender. But again, I'm more of a ZBrush boy here. That's what I tend to keep my focus on. Alright, let's try maybe thinning this out from the front as well. Just a little bit. Try to be really careful here with my mask lasso. And start out like that, and then go into our mask pen to attempt to make a little bit more of an accurate selection. Will Vegeta get UI? Just for gags. I'm not sure what you're referencing there. I don't. Will Vegeta get UI? You were saying something about over 9,000 earlier, but I think that's posed. Is it Vegeta who says that? Is it? Can't remember. I haven't watched DBZ in quite a while. Although I was slightly interested in the new series, and it is just as slow moving as I remember the old show to be. So I was like, not really worth watching. Crap, we did that the wrong way. Need that mask to flip that way. There we go. Much better. Okay. Now a very gentle attempt at thinning out our lip here. Would you consider making a video of you trying to sculpt in Blender? That would be really interesting. Would I consider it? Yes, but when I have such a powerful tool as ZBrush, I see no reason why I should use an inferior sculpting tool. I much prefer ZBrush over other softwares, and yeah, maybe it's something for an experiment in the future, but off the top of my head, I can't really see myself doing that anytime soon, at least. Trying to I could just add a manual reflection in these lips. Real quick, I can show you what I mean by that. So essentially, just grab a white color and then here, I'll try to do that a little bit better. Do one of these. Something like that. I don't know though. Like I said, I'm not really convinced on the material here, but we can play with it a little bit more. And of course, like I said, I can blend that out in post to make that a little less noticeable of a transition. We can use some like spot healing and stuff like that. Or even create a custom material based off of the skin shade for material. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about the lips? What are you feeling? Feeling frisky. Let's do a quick save here. That makes sense. ZBrush is an amazing tool. Got a little echoey there as I talked into my water bottle. Blender has a lot of issues, especially with handling high-res meshes. We're at currently a little over 30 million polygons, so, and this is just a a sketch. This isn't even a full character. I think on Kumadori, the samurai bear, if you guys remember him. Let's see here. Color Fighter, Kumadori, ZBrush. And the Kumadori model just went out on my Patreon for those that are part of that earlier this morning. And that's also available on my Gumroad if you guys are interested in getting this guy as soon as he loads in here. Here he is. He's a little over 70 million polygons. And I had a ton of fun working on this guy. This was one of my favorite projects that we got to work on stream together, and I'm very glad to see him finished and be able to move on to some more stuff. I especially had a lot of fun working on the hammer and doing a lot of this decal kind of work here, the relief sculpture of the koi fish. That was a ton of fun. And so this guy, along with him and his pose, his final pose here, and the T-pose, or just the neutral stance pose, went out on my Patreon and Gumroad just this morning again, if you guys are interested in that guy. But yes, he was a ton of fun. 70 million polys, though. That's why I opened that up to show you. We're at 30 here, so ZBrush can obviously handle quite a bit. Let's see here. Still think it'd be interesting to see what tools you would miss and what bothers you about it. Probably a lot. When I first started sculpting, my professor told me to stick to Mudbox because it was a user-friendly software. I don't know if he is kind of allergic to ZBrush. I think the lips are narrower horizontally and wider vertically, in my opinion. Yeah, if we're going off of this reference exactly, but the style is, I think, so different that we have departed from here that we don't want to. I can't do an exact replication of the lips here, especially if you. Let me pull the larger image here so you guys can maybe see a little bit better. Especially if you look at the crease here that's happening, and then the lack of crease. There's a lot of cheating going on with the perspective, and that makes it a little bit hard to kind of get an exact sculptural replication of that. But again, the style is a little bit different. ZBrush is user-friendly once you learn how to use it. I wouldn't say that it's not user-friendly. You have to make it user-friendly for yourself, which it's a little bit of a hassle and a task, I know, but in all honesty, I think the learning curve of ZBrush as a software, if you can't get over that hump, you're never going to get over the sculpting hump. And that might sound a little mean or rough, but I think it's true simply because of the fact that I know ZBrush pretty well as a software, but my sculpting skills still suffer, and I will continue to, every time a new ZBrush update comes out, it doesn't take that long to learn all the new tools and tricks. Like we have the new text 3D vector tool over here. That didn't take long to learn. What takes a long time to learn is how to sculpt and how to improve in those skills. And I think, honestly, that barrier to entry of the user interface kind of, I think it can always be better. And I think in the next version of ZBrush, it's in ZBrush 5, the next big step up, I think it's going to be a lot better. There's been rumor and talk that it's going to improve for quite a while. But it's not an easy software to use in general. I think even if the UI were better, and I think we'll find out here when we do get that better UI, the software is still going to be very difficult to use just because sculpting is in ZBrush. Digital sculpting is very difficult. I don't think I think a lot of people blame the UI, but I think a lot of that blame is maybe misplaced. All right, I'm gonna forego these lips and work on something else. We can play around with whatever we want. Let me see how we're doing on time real quick. We're just a little bit over an hour, so we still got some time to hang out and play around here on stream. So if you guys have anything specific that you want to see that we can play around with, shout it out in the comments, and we can do some of that. Let's see here real quick. Isn't it much easier to do the more geometrical parts on other software, Rhino, for example, than add it into ZBrush? No, not necessarily. The ZModeler tool is a great tool for box modeling. It's not perfect by any means, and I think the box modeling tools, I know the box modeling tools in something like Maya or 3ds Max are much better and much more powerful. But the ZModeler tool is how I created these wings back here, and it didn't take all that long to do any of this. ZModeler and Live Boolean. I think Rhino, in my opinion, is not a very good box modeler, but that's just my opinion because I'm not a huge fan of the navigation system in Rhino. When sculpting from reference, do you try to get every detail and proportion right, or do you go more for the feel of the character? Depends on what I'm attempting to do. If I'm trying to work for a client and they're paying me to do it, then I'm trying to get it as exact as I possibly can. In this case, though, I'm doing this as a quick little sketch for fun and just personal work here. So, you know, it's in my own style, and I think we're just kind of having fun. So, it's the same character, obviously. It's not hard to tell the it's not difficult to see that they are the same character here, indeed. But no, they are not the exact same style. Even just looking at them, you can tell that pretty easily. Rohit says some poly paint, and John votes for poly paint as well. That will help me with my unpainted model. Okay, guys, let's play around with some poly paint. What could we poly paint then? What could we play around with poly painting? Let's see here. I did save this, so we're kind of good on the file. I don't need to worry about messing this up. I'll just show you guys some quick stuff with this character here really fast and how I applied poly paint to this character. Grab your standard brush. That's just BS. That's just a bunch of BS, guys. B and S, and then grab that standard brush there, BST. Once you have that selected, you don't have to use this brush. I just recommend this brush because it's the standard brush and it's the most simple for what we're going to do. What you're going to do is come up in here and select mRGB. Make sure that ZAdd and ZSubtract are not selected. We're just going to be working with poly paint now, so just color and material. I like to use the Skin Shade 4 material for colors, as I find that it gives a pretty good block out color. And what I mean by that is that if I add a color to this, let's say a red color to this really quick, here with the basic material. The basic material is adding in a lot of the attributes that the basic material holds. and I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that, which is why a lot of people use this Skin Shade 4 material. So that's what we're going to use, the Skin Shade 4. You can find that down in your materials under Standard Materials, Skin Shade 4 in there. Next, what I did was I imported my reference image here. I made sure that spotlight projection was turned off. You can find that in, let's see here, I want curved samples, there it is. So I have this in my little quick pop-up menu, but what you want to do is go into your brush menu, go into samples, and make sure that spotlight projection is unchecked. Okay? After you have done that, that means that you can keep a little spotlight image. You import the spotlight image through your texture palette. So texture import, and then you click add to spotlight. And that's what this is here. And then you have some tools here like rotate, scale, opacity, all these different things. But we won't go into too much detail there with that. And then, let's see here real quick. The Bubs, welcome to the stream. He says Mudbox hasn't had any good content updates since around 2014. All the releases from then till now have all been bug fixes, nothing new. It is pronounced Jonathan, but I like the way you say it too. And Mudbox brushes suck as well. So once you have your spotlight projection image imported, a fun little thing about ZBrush is the C key on your keyboard samples colors. And it samples any color that is inside of ZBrush. So I'm pressing that C key over some of my UI elements, and you can see I can sample these colors. I can sample, you know, any of these colors. I can sample this sphere just by tapping this C key. So I can sample all of that. And then here within Spotlight, as long as this ring is visible, I can press the C key and sample anything here in my image. So I'm looking for a good red or pinkish color to sample here. I can maybe try to find a few. I like that, but maybe I want to make it a little bit darker so that it matches my material a little bit better. And I can try a little bit darker. I don't know. It's not quite what we're looking for. We'll go with that. And then from there, I am just going to have this selected, have my Skin Shade 4 materials selected, have my colors selected, got everything, we're ready to go, and all I have to do is select the piece that I want and click Fill Object. And you'll see that that paintbrush icon becomes visible. That means that that has been filled with that color. You can do the same thing with our shirt here. I'm just going to sample the color and fill in our object here with our shirt. We can do the same thing with our sleeves. Not too difficult at all. So I'll just hide everything here, sample that, and sample this as well, and fill that in. And actually, I'm going to press the V key, and that lets me swap between my two colors there very quickly. So now very easily you can see that I can kind of come through here, select the mesh that I want, and start applying these colors. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward, I hope, for you guys. And once you get to that point, let's see here, I'm just stepping back a little ways. Once you fill in all the colors of the rainbow of your character here, you're going to have something pretty similar to what I have, except for the fact that my face has a little bit more unique poly paint on it, my face and my hair. So let's do an mRGB. So this is what your face will most likely end up looking like if, whoa, let's make sure we get that correct there. Fill that in all the way, and fill in our eyelids all the way. So this is a little bit closer to what you'd be looking at if you were to be just filling in the poly paint and materials the way that I'm doing it here. So what we want to do is, I'm just going to start off, you know, I got my eyelids here. The eyelids, looking at my reference, are a little bit darker and have a little bit of that pink in there. So the way I got to that color is I started off by sampling my pink. Holding the space bar pops up all this information. It's also up here, so you can mess with some of these sliders. I'm putting my RGB intensity on about 30, and essentially I'm clicking Fill Object, and essentially what that tells ZBrush to do is fill this object with 30% of this color. That's what that 31 is when I click Fill Object. Now, of course, we want them to be a little bit darker, so maybe I'll select this dark brown of the eyebrows, or maybe this black even for the eyelashes. Let's try the brown first and just kind of fill that in. Okay, I like that. Now let's sample that color and maybe try to add a little bit more saturation in here, so drag that to the right, maybe down a little bit for darkness. Try that, fill that in, and I think that's a pretty good place. A pretty good starting place for what we want here. Similar with the hair, we'll start here before I go into the face a little bit more. With the hair, you can see that there's a little bit of a gradient here in color. Starts off with this golden color and fades into a little bit of a darker, more pinkish color here, kind of replicating what we see in this pink down here. Let me turn those back on real quick. Okay, so the way you can accomplish that, I'll do it on just a single strand here so that you can see. I start off with a solid hair color. So this is what it would look like. Let me hide this guy here. So this is our single hair color with our single strand here, and what we're gonna do is step all the way down in our subdivision levels, mask off half of our hair, and then I'm just gonna control click and let ZBrush crash. That's okay, we're good. We'll get back to that here in just a sec. Luckily it quick saved for us, even though I have the file saved, so it's not a huge deal. Oh, that is the work of the C key. I always thought C key was good for nothing. No. You can, I think that's the default hotkey for it, or it should be. I haven't messed with it to my knowledge. Let's grab this recovered tool. And I'm just going to shift my light. Okay, so here we are. We were masking off this hair strand. So you're going to start off by masking off half of your little hair tube here. Taking a big yawn, grabbing another drink of water for your sore throat, and then control clicking. Control clicking with a mask softens that mask, control click off your object to flip your mask, and control click again to soften that a little bit in the other direction. I'm going to step back up, and you can see that we have a nice gradated mask, a nice gradient. Now from here, I can sample whatever color I want with that C key again. We can try this pink here, and let's apply some RGB again, And let's try an intensity of, let's try that 30%. Let's try roughly that. Fill object. And we can maybe do that one more time, so that would be 60% if you're keeping track. And then we can clear our mask, and you can see exactly what that's going to look like. So there's a quick little poly paint trick for getting a nice little gradient in there. And that's a little bit stronger than what I have in the other pieces here, but I think that's totally fine for our illustrative purposes. All right, now on to our face. Now for poly painting the face. This is the most complicated part of this. I'm going to use just a bunch of different pretty simple techniques here. But I'm going to treat the face kind of a little bit like my painting canvas. And what I mean by that is if I come down here, of course when you paint something like a face or anything where you're adding some variety, I recommend that you use the standard brush. I also recommend that you use a very low RGB intensity of around 20 or less. I'm using about 10 here. So I'm just going to come in here and apply this pink color here in full, as well as this color up here. So a little bit, again, like my own personal canvas, my own painting canvas. I recommend the solo key over here for you, and I recommend that you set a hotkey for that. For me, the hotkey is my G key. I use the G key to toggle that on and off, and you're going to find that to be very helpful during this process, as well as many of the processes that you'll sculpt or paint in ZBrush. To set a hotkey, you hold Control and Alt and click on that button. Make sure that you do not move your mouse off of that button. If you look in the top corner up here, it says hotkey note operation canceled. That's because I moved my mouse off of the button. So Control Alt click, it says press any key combination to assign a custom hotkey. Press the G key at this time, and now when you press the G key, it will toggle on and off dynamic mode. Solo mode. My apologies. Cool trick with the gradient. You rock, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad that you enjoyed the gradient little trick there. It's very helpful. It's most helpful if you have subdivision levels, though, so do keep that in mind. Whew. All this talking is killing my throat. All right, so painting here. Again, taking a look at my RGB intensity, I have it very low. Not only do I have it very low, I'm using a Cintiq, and that means that I have pressure sensitivity. That means I can stroke very lightly or I can stroke very hard. You can see the difference. I will tell you this, I am stroking very lightly, very gently here. Essentially, I'm just coming through here and adding a little bit of this highlighted pink color around the eyes. And I can look here and see what that looks like. And I'll add it around the bottom as well. And just try to get that color on there as best as I can. I would also like to add some darkness to here. So I'm just going to sample the black color, a little bit of eyeshadow, right? If we're talking about makeup here, that's what we would reference. So trying to get this around the eyes to add a little bit more depth, and I can switch on and off between my solo mode again to visualize what that's going to look like. If you want to sample multiple colors, again, that V key swaps your colors. You can also manually do it there with the button. But if you go a little bit too far, you can just sample your base color and go back over that and erase it. Not very hard at all. I would not recommend undoing here for this process, but just kind of painting a little bit more freehand and taking each stride one step at a time. Sorry. So just kind of playing around with this. I want to begin to add a little bit more warmth around these eyelids. We can also take that color, add it to the nose, and we can, let's get rid of this up here. Can add a little bit to the forehead. Again, I'm using a large brush here and I'm stroking very lightly. It's a little bit more purple and pink that I want, a little bit more purple than I want. So I want that to be a little bit more warm here. So I'm just kind of selecting a little bit of a more warm color and coming through and painting that onto my forehead. And at this point I've pushed that a little bit too far, but that's totally fine. Again, I can swap colors and try to blend that back in. It's a lot of light blending here that's going on. Very gentle strokes. I'm going to try to pull this into the cheekbones and the cheek as best as I can. You can see there the color being applied, sometimes a little bit too strong, so let's lower our RGB intensity even a little bit more. Let's get rid of our little chin dimple there and add some of that warmth into our chin and jawline as well as here. And just some general kind of blending, just kind of going through this gently here. And you can see that it's all starting to come together pretty nicely. I'm going to continue to sample some colors here on my mesh and go back through and attempt to blend these colors all a little bit better. Trying to add some depth here, so some warmth on places where some more of the fleshy places, like here on the nose. The nose tends to be a little bit more red. Your ears tend to be a little bit more red. If you want to look up some references for painting faces, you guys can. I think that might be a good idea. If you want a little bit more information on where some of these reds and blues are located. Just kind of thinking about that stuff. But as you can see here, relatively quickly, we've been able to add some nice clean, subtle coloring, subtle poly paint to this face. And there's a lot of pre-sculpture work that went into this to help it look as good as it does at this point. So if you're just poly painting a sphere, of course, you know, it's not going to look nearly as good. If you want to practice on something, whoops, if you head on over to my Gumroad and you want something to practice on, I would recommend this character here, my female base mesh. It's also a very useful tool for just sculpting. But then I also have a bunch of free stuff on here for you guys. A lot of free stuff that you can kind of, maybe you grab Princess Jasmine, her little head here, or this blonde sweater girl, and you practice your poly painting on those, or maybe even a little Charizard sculpt. So maybe grab one of those and play around and try to poly paint your own face. Let's see here. That's pretty much the basics for this. A little bit more advanced, kind of the next level up. We're still using the standard brush, but we're going to change our stroke to color spray. And we're going to change our alpha to alpha 07. Let's actually just do color spray first so you can see what this looks like and understand what's happening. You can see here the little bit of stippling that's happening. Well, if we add this alpha 07 it kind of increases that stippling effect there. If you don't know what stippling is, in traditional sculpture, traditional painting, stippling, let's just stippling. Maybe we can get a little quick pick. Maybe not. Essentially, you're taking a brush and taking the bristles and like flicking them, and you're flicking these little dots of paint onto your image. There are other techniques, but that's just kind of one of them. And that's kind of what this is replicating here with this color spray, Alpha 07. And the point of this is to create a variety in your colors. I'm going to drop my RGB intensity down to about 2, very low here, and well, actually, let's just keep it back where it was, and begin applying this on our mesh. And I'll start to add some in the cheek, maybe for some darkening of areas. Essentially, what you want to do with stippling is you want to add a multitude of layers to your work. This is how you would create a very realistic looking skin. You would use a lot of reds and a lot of blues depending on what part of the head you are working on, and that might seem a little strange, but typically more fleshy parts tend to be more red, and more bony parts tend to be more blue. But there's a lot of colors going on in the face that add up to create that that illusion of a singular, you know, color for your face. There's many colors going on though. So that's how you would do that, and that takes quite a long time to get to that point. And for this character here, I don't want to do any stippling because of the texture that we will acquire from that. And I want this to be very clean and very smooth, so that's what I'm aiming for here. Next, let's just paint our lips real quick, and then we can move on to something else. I'm just gonna grab I'll just grab this color back here. We'll stick with that. And we'll go over how you can paint the lips. Start with a selection. It's Control and Shift. Select what you want. Get rid of what you don't. What we want is the lips, and only the lips. It's fine with me if we get some paint on the mouth bag. That's okay, it's not a big deal. Quickly switch that real quick. So what I'm gonna do is just take my lips here. Whoops. I want just my lips pretty much. Doesn't have to be a great selection. And then from here, I'm just going to throw my RGB intensity all the way up to 100 and click Fill Object. And of course, that looks very absurd for this. So we're gonna go back through and clean up our paint until we have just our lips selected. And this is a pretty dark color here, but I'll show you how you can maybe blend that a little bit better. So just kind of being a little careful here with my standard brush as I pull it up, and try to do a decent job at painting this and cover up. You know, this is like the old school painting in the lines kind of thing you used to do when you were a kid. So we should all be somewhat good at this. If you're struggling though, you know, you can always turn on your lazy mouse and help that guide you a little bit if you need to. I'm going to leave it off for the time being though. And then, you know, of course, if you make a mistake, oops, you can just sample the color again and fill in what you need. So no worries, nice and easy to work with. Polypaint is fairly forgiving on most things. So once you have that in a place where you're kinda pretty happy with your end result there, I won't strive for perfection here, since we're kind of just using this for illustrative purposes. Once you kind of get to a place where you're happy, and I would like to blend in some of these colors that are coming off the cheeks here a little bit better. There we go. So let's say, ooh, that's too dark, right? I want that to be a little more subtle. It's pretty, let's see, Ryatashi says, how do you sample the color? Just the C key on your keyboard. You can sample any color in your entire ZBrush interface. C, the C key on your keyboard. You can see that color. If I just hold the C key down, you can see that color changing. Okay, you want to lessen the saturation here. So we can just, you know, sample our flesh color and lightly kind of stroke over that a few times. And just like that, we have lightened the color going on here in the lips. And you can do that again if you're still feeling like it's still a little too strong. But you can get that wherever you need to and add in some different poly paint colors, whatever you need to do to get those lips in the face exactly where you want it. Thank you, says Ryatashi. You're very welcome, absolutely. But yeah, those are some pretty basic poly painting tips and some stuff that you can do there. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys, and if you have any questions about that process, let me know. Whew. And we can start looking at some other stuff here as well. I feel a sneeze coming on. Ooh. And it left, but I still feel like I gotta sneeze, but I'm not. All right, let's see here. What Z scripts do you ever? What are Z scripts? Do you ever use it? Z scripts are, whoops. Z script is a language for you to be able to create tools or macros inside of ZBrush. It is a programming language for ZBrush, essentially. That's what these Z plugins are created with. So your lovely transpose master, UV master, all of these are made with Z script, at least most of them. And then you also have macros, and if you look here, Z script, it's this little menu up here. You can essentially record different actions and write that to a file. You can essentially do the same thing with macros. That's pretty much how you would create a macro here. I believe you can also do it in this menu maybe. It's been a little bit since I've done it, so you'll have to forgive me. But if you see here, macros, Follygon's AIM, that's me. Follygon's auto image macro. This is my auto image macro. It's just a quick little Z script that I wrote. And there's this little get images button here. How can I can't really illustrate this quickly with this character, just because it's a bit of a high resolution. Let's try this real quick. merge visible. This might work. It might be. We'll see. I'm just going to go to deformation unify, so I have this in the center and at the correct size that I need it to be. And then I'm going to go to my macros, and I'm going to click Get Images. You guys don't have this macro. This is a macro that I made. You can get it through my Patreon, though, if you want it. I essentially got to a point in my career that when I was working for clients, I got really tired of creating a bunch of turnaround images for clients and going through the same process over and over and over again. So I made this quick little script, and essentially what it does is it sets my canvas to, I think, like 2,500 pixels by 2,500 pixels, or maybe 4,000 pixels or 5, or so it crashed as expected, which is okay. We can try it one more time, but I have a bunch of garbage in here, which is why it crashed. So we'll try it one more time. Essentially what it will do is it'll create a particular canvas size, take a screenshot of my character, rotate it 45 degrees, and then repeat that, and it'll do that 8 times. And it does that 8 times so that you can get all 8 views of your character. So snapshot, 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 snapshot. And then it saves all those images into a folder of your choice. So this is just, again, a little script that I made for my purposes to show off work to clients, as well as it's good for, we can try it again, I guess. Get images. It's also good for taking screenshots of your work and then taking them into Photoshop, flipping the canvas, and then critiquing your own work real quick. So this is a little bit of a high poly mesh for everything to be in one subtool. It did work though, so I'm going to click OK. It'll think for a second, do a little rotation, click OK. And I don't have to click OK, I can just click or press enter and it'll jump through these really quick. Again, it's a pretty high poly mesh for what this was designed for, so it might struggle a little bit. But it'll go through this whole process, and then I'll have a bunch of very large images that I can work off of. And we'll rotate all the way back around. I'm just going to click cancel a few times to abort that Z script. That's a nice word, isn't it? Abort. But once we have all those images, I think it saves it for me. Where does it save these images? I thought I originally had them saved to my downloads folder. Huh. Well, let's do this. So this PC, we want our local disk, program files, pixel logic, ZBrush, Z startup, macros, Follygon's AIM. So this is my auto image macro here, and then I can is it my text document? Yes. So this is my script right here. It's actually pretty simple. It might look a little complicated, but it's really not. So it saves it where? Just to my C drive. Is that right? File name set C:. Well, for some reason, I'm not seeing them. Maybe when you install this, you have to choose the folder where you want these to be saved. File name set C:. Either way, it's supposed to save them to my C drive. I'm not positive why it didn't. Can try to figure that out, but it's not important. So essentially from there, you know, you would take your images and throw them into Photoshop or whatever you want, and then critique them or send them to a client or whatever. It's not not crazy complicated. I think I wrote the script in less than a week after I had to do some tweaking to it to get it exactly where I wanted. But after that, I haven't really made too many changes to it since that point. Let's see here. It makes the document 3,000 pixels by 3,000. So pretty neat, pretty cool tool. I had a lot of fun making it, and I only make tools for stuff that I need. I haven't used it in a while because I don't. Because pretty much most of the time I'll just like drop the model to my canvas a few times and do some rotations that way. But if I want it to look really professional, that is the tool that I would use, that macro. That lesson on poly painting was awesome. Thanks for helping us out with it. Absolutely, glad I could. Is there any way we can show you our characters and you point out some flaws in it? Yes. So what I do currently, if you hop on over to my Patreon, I have a little tier there for, there should be a link down in the description. Yeah, it's the first link there in the description is my Patreon. And if you want some critiques or anything like that, I offer a tier for that. With that, what I essentially do is if you send me a file, I just turned on this tier list, this new tier on my Patreon. I've recently changed the way my Patreon works, but in the past, I've been sent many people's work to critique and do sculpt overs. So I finally added a tier for people to access that a little bit more easier than it was in the past through my Patreon. So the way that works is you send me your model, your character, whatever you want, and I'll spend some time personally doing a sculpt over of that. We can even I can even do a recording of that for you and send you that recording along with the sculpt over version and give you some tips, tricks, and ways that you can improve your model. And there's a lot of different things that you can ask specifically for me to take a look at, but if you want more of a general kind of look over as well, that's a good way to go about doing that as well, I think. Excuse me, again, my throat is just dying. We're getting close to about 2 hours here. That means it's time for some protein. And hopefully this doesn't scratch up my throat too much. A little granola bar. But if there's anything else we want to take a look at here, we have, what, around an hour left that I can stream and hang out. So a little snack time. If you guys got your snacks, grab some popcorn or whatever you have. And we can decide what to work on next. Are you watching One Punch Man? One Punch Man. I have like a poster of One Punch Man in my closet. I love One Punch Man. I'm up to date on the manga, and I'm up to date on the webcomic, the crappily drawn webcomic that hasn't been updated in like a year now. I love One Punch Man, yes. Let's see here. Can just do a little bit of doodling here, play around. I'm not positive how long the concepting stage of the other character that I am going to start next is going to be. I told you guys that after, if you guys were around for that, after this little sketch, I plan on working on a more full character next, but depending on what that process looks like, it could be 2 weeks from now before I start on that at the most. I'm hoping it's not, though, and I'm hoping that I can get that started a little bit more quickly. It's a little bit dependent on someone else, so it's kind of out of my control, unfortunately. But let's see here. Here's a little cool concept I found of Bowser Jr. Quite a while ago. I have no idea who the artist is. And someone was asking about, I can't remember who it was, but they were asking about if I would do another Nintendo character. So I thought this one might be fun. This one might be fun to play around with and work on. I've done a Bowser Jr. or a, sorry, yeah, Bowser Jr., Baby Bowser? I've done a Bowser Jr. in the past. I love Bowser Jr. and both Bowser. I think they're just such a cool little design. Can I pass him? Bowser Jr., where are you? Oh, here he is. Sorry. So yeah, I did a quick little Bowser Jr. just speed sculpt in a day, and then worked on some more longer scale projects. This was for Sculpt-Timber. I was doing a bunch of little Nintendo daily sketches, just speed sculpts, stuff like that, and playing around with some of that stuff. So yeah, I love Nintendo stuff. I would like to do another Nintendo character. If that's something that you guys think would be fun to play around with, or maybe something else, I don't know. We can maybe sculpt the Statue of David and do a very bad job of attempting to give justice to that. Maybe we can sculpt some more rocks, or cue ball here if we feel like it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to spend some time getting started on Bowser Jr. just quite yet, but we can play around with some other stuff here. Do you have a video? Excuse me. Indy, welcome to the stream, by the way. How's it going? Indy says, do you have a video for the most important ZBrush techniques? And then Rohit says, maybe you should sculpt Saitama next. Speaking of cue balls, there's another one. It's not a bad idea. I do love me some Saitama. So, most important ZBrush techniques. The most important ZBrush techniques are the fundamentals. And if you want to get caught up on all the fundamentals of ZBrush as quickly as possible, you're not going to find a quicker and better tutorial series than my How to ZBrush series here on my YouTube channel. Just look up Follygon How to ZBrush and you should find it no problem. That'll tell you all the most important fundamentals and stuff you need to know to get you up and running in ZBrush as quickly as possible. Let's go ahead and make this a Polymesh 3D. And we can just start doodling away for the time being and hopefully answer some questions along the way. Saitama would be so much fun, or that would be so much fun. Maybe you're talking about Bowser. I'm not positive there. Try to make a Link from The Legend of Zelda, I believe, is what you're talking about. I would love to do that as well. A lot of this stuff takes a long time to do, so I need to be very certain of what I am setting out to sculpt before I do so, and I need to make sure that I have appropriate time to do such a thing. I would love to do a Link at some point in my own style, or maybe in maybe like a mechanical Link, or something just different and interesting, and try to do something with that. I think there's a lot of room for some really cool, fan art in there. We can just kind of play around and doodle, though. It's been a while since I've sat here and just kind of had some time to doodle and play. So we can do that for a second, and again, try to answer questions along the way. Let's try, I would like to add this clay buildup brush to my main brushes down here. I need to do that at some point. Play with that as well. And Benoit, is it Benoit? I don't know how to say your name. Is it French? Because I am not French, unfortunately, and I do not know how to pronounce French names very well. I'm going to call you Ben. My name's Ben too, though, so it's pretty easy to remember. Genos would be cool. Hard surface and organic. I totally agree. It'd be awesome. Again, next thing I do is probably just going to be a little bit of a sketch, or depending on how quickly the other person that I'm working with gets me some stuff, like I said, it's a little dependent on them, out of my hands, I can start working on the next next big full character. But until then, we can just kind of sketch and play around. Everything in ZBrush and in 3D and sculpting begins by looking like an alien. If you're unaware of this, you have much to learn, young Padawan. Speaking of Padawans, has anyone seen the new Star Wars movie? I have not, but I hear good things. I hear very good things. I'm not like a super Star Wars nerd. I've seen all the movies though. It's not a huge passion of mine though. I've always been more of a fantasy guy myself, but I still like Star Wars. I do. I remember playing on the PlayStation 2 back in the day, Battlefront and Battlefront 2. Those games were fantastic. Some of the best games, I think, personally, ever made. For their time, they were just way above the competition of people trying to do something similar. Even today, I think a lot of people do stuff worse than they did back then, and that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. Do you know why the transpose tool is weird? The transpose tool, young man or woman, whomever you may be, elephant, I don't really know because you're hidden behind the anonymity of the internet, but the transpose tool is not weird. The transpose tool is amazing. It's ZBrush that is weird, and the user interface is a little bit difficult to learn and get behind, but once you learn ZBrush, you can learn, once you learn how the transpose tool works, there's a lot of really cool hidden functionality within this tool that a lot of people don't know how to use. But once you learn it, it's faster than the 3D Gizmo for sure. I use the transpose tool over the 3D Gizmo. I love the transpose tool. I'm a huge fan of it. That's because I've been using ZBrush for longer than the 3D Gizmo is pretty new, so but yes, I love the transpose tool. It's not that it's weird, it's just that it's not inherently obvious how it works by looking at it. You have to kind of read up on it and practice the functionality of what all it can do. And once you figure all that out, it starts opening up a lot of possibilities that you wouldn't be able to do with other tools that aren't possible with the 3D Gizmo, or that you can't do as quickly as you can with the transpose tool. So I'm a big proponent of the transpose tool, but like everything, it's something you got to learn, and once you do, I think you're better off for it. But if you want to know why the transpose tool is the way it is, you'll have to ask the team at Pixelogic. Unfortunately, I don't know why it was made the way that it is, but I'm pretty happy with the functionality that I can get out of it for my purposes here. Have you played COD WW, Call of Duty World War II? I have not played Call of Duty World War II. I haven't played a Call of Duty game since the Xbox 360 days, and then just playing like Nazi zombies on my friends' like PS4 and stuff like that. But that's about it. No, I have not played Call of Duty World War II, and I have not heard anything about it, really, to be honest. So I don't know much. I haven't really enjoyed a Call of Duty game other than the zombie mode for a while. The zombie mode, like the zombie horde mode, has always been pretty fun. But yeah, I don't have the only console I have currently is a Nintendo Switch, and my computer, and then I also have a Nintendo GameCube, and I play that more than any other console. Me and my roommate, play Super Smash Bros. Melee fairly religiously, a little too much probably. You know, probably like every other night we try to get a few matches in, it seems like. So, sorry, I'm stuck back in 2003, 2004 with my Smash Bros. I'm just kind of playing around right now. I'm not attempting to go for anything. A little gopher. I'm not attempting to go for anything too specific here. Just kind of, again, playing around. Not using any reference, just kind of going off of what I see, what I like, and just kind of do something really simple and basic here proportionally. Indy says, any suggestions for anatomy books or in general videos, literature for sculpting? Started ZBrush a week ago and inspired to learn. Yes, absolutely. Start off, of course, with my How to ZBrush series on YouTube. Just Google Follygon, How to ZBrush, and you should find it pretty easily. From there, after you have a good base, I would move on to my stylized female face tutorial. And then kind of jump and pick around some tutorials, maybe watch some more tutorials in speed sculpts or whatever you like from there. Then if you scroll down in the description of this stream, this video, if you look under my gear, down there you'll see a beginner ZBrush book, an intermediate ZBrush book, and an advanced ZBrush book. I love all three. They helped me out a ton. That bottom advanced ZBrush book is more just anatomy, and it expects you to understand pretty much how to understand how everything works inside of ZBrush, so it doesn't help you much there. That beginner book is pretty good though for getting you started as well, and then that intermediate book is a good blend of some anatomy stuff as well as still being a little hand-holdy in some of the ZBrush stuff, which is important, I think, for a lot of people in the beginning, to make sure that they don't feel completely lost, as ZBrush is a deep, deep blue ocean of confusion for a lot of people in the beginning. But again, before you buy anything, hey, have some free content. How to ZBrush, check it out. How to ZBrush Follygon, that's me. And let me know if you find some of that info helpful for you. All right. Oh, I always accidentally attempt to throw a sphere on here the incorrect way. Just an old habit. I'm going to use this as an eye mesh. Or at least a starting point for the eyeball. And let's try to get that into position a little bit there. I'm just kind of playing around with some very simple forms, nothing too crazy. You can see the basic shape of a skull here. I'm trying to keep it within proportional reason so that we don't get too out of funk here. So can still keep some appeal, but maybe we're making something alien. Honestly, this could be anything, whatever we're feeling. Let's try to add some volume here to the brow. Starting to get a little too much tilt forward. So now I want to start building up this shape. Can already see that cheekbone kind of starting to form there. And you can even do a little bit of a subtraction for the hollowness that you might get from the cheek, as well as it playing off of the cheekbone there. Just kind of understanding how those two those two surfaces play off of one another. Can start to form the basic shape here of the nose, and maybe Trim that in a little bit. Might have gone a little overboard, a little strong there. Just using some pinch as well. Round out that mouth, that basic mouth shape as much as I can. Really, the most important part of your character is going to be these initial shapes, these primary forms, and that's something that I say a lot. If you've stuck around for any amount of time on my streams, and that's because it's true, your initial shapes and primary forms are detrimental to your character being a success in terms of your sculpture. I'm about to have my throat explode. Rohit says, the way you sculpted the eyes in your stylized head series was a little bit hard for me to understand. That method was new for me, and I still can't get over it. Well, hey, if it's, I don't know, watch it again, try to just pause the video and follow along as best as you can. If there's maybe a little bit of a language barrier there and you have some questions, feel free to send them my way. I'd be happy to answer those as best as I can. Yeah, if you're having trouble following that one, I'm about to sculpt some eyes here, so maybe we can hang out together and sculpt some eyes, and you can maybe learn right now. So take a gander. I have appended 2 spheres here. 1 sphere, and then it's just mirrored across. If I want to create some eyelids next, which I very much do, we want to get to a point here where we're able to do that. Here till the end of time, says Rohit. Never leaving, never shall I leave or forsake you. Very devout of you, Rohit. I appreciate your devotion. Shaping the skull a little bit here in the back, a little better. Or at least trying to do a little bit of a better job. It's peaceful and nice to just kind of sculpt away and not really have anything particular that you need to make, but often having a direction can be a little easier to work with, just because you know exactly where you're heading and you can do so a little bit faster and more confidently. With this, you know, it's just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Nothing really. I wouldn't even call this a human character yet, as I'm still kind of just feeling my way out on it. When you're working on a head, I recommend that you turn perspective on fairly frequently. And the reason that is would be because if you leave perspective off the whole time, or if you leave perspective on the whole time, either or, you're probably going to end up with a little bit of a warped mesh in some respect. So I recommend that you flip on and off between the two and try to give both the respect that they deserve. This is definitely looking a bit more masculine, which is fine. As you know, we just did Mercy here. A little bit more feminine, right? This looks ugly in comparison, right? But, you know, we're just getting started, so it's just a doodle, just a sketch. And like I said, everything starts out looking like garbage, or like an alien, as I like to say. You can see the pinching of all the geometry I got going on. So I'm obviously not too concerned with my topology. Next up, I'm using a curve tube snap brush on a duplicated mesh so that I can delete it. I'm using this for my eyelids. You don't have to do it this way, but I just find that this is pretty similar to how traditional sculptors would accomplish this. And then after you get that in position, just delete your extra part, this mesh, just delete it, and then you just have the tube here. And then you can kind of adjust that as you need to. And for our eyes, let's, excuse me. We can add a toy plastic material here and start working on doing just some quick pupils or irises. Just blocked out, pretty simple, nothing crazy. Rohit asks, what is the reason behind the name Follygon? It sounds cool though, whatever that reason may be. Follygon sounds like polygon, right? So that's one. The word an n-gon, if you guys know what an n-gon is, that's a mistake most of the time. That is a folly. Folly, the word folly means mistake. It also comes from a book called The Name of the Wind. So it has special meaning to me from that. But yeah, that's it's not, I mean, it's not anything too special. It's just a name that I chose. And that's pretty much it. Nothing crazy, but it's been my online kind of username for a while. But yeah, that's pretty much, I don't know, that's pretty much it. And I would like to get some eyelids in here as well. Some lower eyelids. And we're going to do that by doing the same exact technique here. But what we will do differently is we will merge this geometry with the face, but we will not do that with the upper lid. I'd like to keep that one separate. Whew. You can do some creasing on this piece if you want. If the edge loops aren't lining up for you though, you can always do some pinching to get that where you need it. Similar to that method there. And if you want, you can even Z-remesh this with polygroups. So 2 polygroups, Z-remesh, keep groups, let that do its thing, and then you should have a nice clean edge loop here that you can use your Z-modeler brush on and crease that edge loop. The Z-modeler brush is for box modeling inside of ZBrush, so you can see what that looks like creased there. And then let's delete some extra edge loops here. And some of these are not going to do exactly what we want. Unfortunately, we have some extra poly groups in here. Let's try to clean that up as best as we can. We can mess with that a little bit more later. Your eyes are not always looking directly straight. They're a little pointed outward. And that's because it depends on the distance away of the thing that you're looking at. Very dependent on that. But yeah, some more work here on just some different parts. And we can try to clean this up a little bit. And there's a few different ways to do this. I'm just going to try to get a quick stroke in there. And get a quick lasso, mask lasso. Pull some of this down, adjust it. And you can see how you start to get the base here of some eyes fairly quickly just by kind of inserting some geometry and playing with it that way. And of course, you know, you can always merge this down, merge these 2 pieces of geometry together, and then Dynamesh them. And try a little bit higher Dynamesh, 400. And just a quick gentle smooth there. And you can see here, got some nice little lower lids to work with. You can kind of play with those as you see fit. So pretty simple stuff, nothing crazy. If I would like at this point, I can start working on the mouth, or I can start creating some subdivision levels for this. We can do a bunch of different stuff. Let's create some quick subdivision levels and try to get a, well, before we do that, let's start trying to get a little bit of a mouth bag here on this guy. Ryan Dinho, I like Dino, makes me think that you're an actual dinosaur. Ryan, welcome to the stream, thanks for joining us. I don't think I've ever seen Ryan spelled that way. Maybe it's not Ryan, maybe it's Rayanne. I don't know, not positive. I've always seen it R-Y-A-N, not R-A-Y-A-N. Very unique. Should be proud of your very unique name. So yeah, this face is definitely leaning towards more masculine, but it's really pretty simple to turn a face from looking masculine into something that looks a little bit more feminine. How you do that essentially revolves around you changing the softness of a lot of the shapes in the face, and proportionally there's some stuff that you need to worry about as well, but it's not the end of the world if you start making a big burly boy and then decide that, hey, I want this to look a bit more feminine from this point here. So it's not the end of the world. Don't feel like you have to be locked into one particular thing. And we can try to do a little bit of some nasolabial folds in here. Essentially, more so I just want to clean up the transition between the nose and the cheek there on the side, pinched quite strongly, as well as maybe get a little bit of a dip here. I really enjoy sculpting noses. They're pretty fun as like little projects by themselves. I actually sculpt a nose in one of the how-to ZBrush videos, so if you haven't checked out that series and would like to sculpt your very own nose, it's a good place to check out some steps for how you can do that. Whoops. Can swap our material real quick. Everything looks pretty dirty right now if you're looking just at my mesh in general, but really that's not a huge concern of mine, especially in beginning stages of a sculpture where I'm trying to just block things out proportionally and have things look a little bit better in that regard. All right. Very small little hole here so that I can start blocking out where this mouth will be. And I want to move that up and a little bit larger. Whoops. Make sure that there's no mask on the other side. And that's pretty simple for just starting off with getting your mouth bag into position. If you're not familiar with mouth bags and what I'm talking about there, there's a mouth bag is essentially just your mouth cavity. It's a way to think of it. How do you make hairs for stylized cares? How do you make hair for stylized characters? I went over that a little bit earlier in the stream for this character here and the process for doing so. So if you missed that, watch our last stream from earlier this morning, or if you want to go to my stylized female face tutorial series, the last video is how to sculpt hair, and I go a little bit into detail about how you can do some different techniques for getting that. So check that out, or check out the stream where I kind of go over a little bit of this process here, but it's pretty similar to the process that I mentioned in that video that I just showed you. Talking about Mercy's hair. It was with different meshes, was it? Not sure what you mean by that, but these are individual meshes. Yes, that is correct. All these are different meshes as well. Whew. Sore throat is not doing me any justice right now. Yeah, so individual meshes created with the Curve Tube Snap Brush, the same brush that I used to insert an eyelid on this guy. Same exact brush. Whew. Cool off for a sec. Let's see. I'm probably only gonna hang out for another 20-ish minutes or so. So, if you guys got any other questions, ask them now. Ask them now while you still can, before I leave you forever. I was totally just kidding about leaving you guys forever. By the way, I'll be streaming again tomorrow, most likely. So you guys can come hang out again if you're free and available. Please do. Love chatting with you guys always. Just hanging out and doing some little doodles, and always at least being productive and practicing. That's always a good thing in my mind. For lips, what I like to do is split my mesh into two separate pieces. And then work on each lip individually. I'm still not done with ZBrush. You shouldn't be. I'm not done with ZBrush either. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I'm never done with ZBrush. ZBrush is my favorite game. I like to think of ZBrush as a game, and I'm trying to break my high score every day in ZBrush. That looks just terrible there. Try that again. Let's see here. Start off with that characteristic bow shape. the outer crease of the lips. Don't want to push it too far though, it ends up looking a little silly. And then start creating that form of the upper lip, giving it some juice, some fluff, whatever you personally refer to your upper lips juiciness as. I like juice. I think that's a good word for describing lips and what you need to do to them. You need to juice those lips. It's getting weird now. It's odd because the lower lip tends to be just as difficult to create as the upper lip, even though the lower lip shape is arguably more simple, but I tend to find them to be about the same in time that I spend working on them. Honestly, they work together as a pair. You can't really have one look natural without having the other. So that's probably why, in all honesty. Whoa. Not what we wanted. For the lower lip, it's more about the shapes that you create around it than it is of the actual shape of the lower lip, although that is important as well. But you need to get the characteristic muscles that flow off of that, as well as the divot that is up under the lip that you will find there. And then start to create the actual shape of that lower lip. Start to build up that form a little bit more. I should grab my ice cream too. Watching you eat makes me hungry. Yeah. If you have some protein ice cream, that would be awesome. There's some ice cream called Halo Top, which is protein ice cream. I'm just eating a protein bar, or a protein granola bar. It really doesn't have that much protein in it. Could you please show me how to do rendering? I go to the gym too, says Rohit. Yeah, just click this button up here and we'll render it for you. Ta-da! That's how you render inside of ZBrush. To show you how to get a good rendering, it would probably take quite a while. If you want to look at this, if I were to just render this as is, it's going to turn out, so this BPR button up here stands for Best Preview Render. So if you take a look at that, it looks pretty crappy. And it creates these really harsh shadows here. You can see all these. So the way you're going to alleviate that, I'm going to give you some really good basic settings in ZBrush for your render. So you're going to come into your render menu. We want to open Render Properties and BPR Shadow. You're going to have to probably rewind the video and maybe take some notes here real quick, but turn on Ambient Occlusion in Render Properties, and then in BPR Shadow set these numbers right here. So G strength about 0.25, raise you can do anywhere from 15 to 50. It's going to increase the quality of your shadows, and angle is going to give you a little bit softer shadows. This just controls how strong your shadows are. So I'm actually going to set this to like 20. And here's our current render with these harsh shadows. And this render will take a little bit longer, but you will immediately see the difference between those two renders. And that's just a quick way for you to get some really basic render settings for your stuff in ZBrush. But if you want to do more than that, you're going to have to kind of experiment, or maybe look through some of my older videos, as I'm not going to have enough time to go over all of that right now. But you can see that, of course, we get a much higher quality of shadow here. It's a little bit softer, more ambient. From here, you can go into your BPR render passes and export your different passes. If I was doing this, I would just take the shaded and the mask, and these are kind of already applied on there, so I'm not too worried about that. Another thing I would do is, if I was doing this render, I would come into my Z plugin menu and click on ZBrush to Photoshop and export a bunch of different layers individually out by clicking Send to Photoshop, and then manually adjust some things in there. That'll take too long to do, so I'm not going to do that. But you can see the difference in quality of the render that you get from there. So how do you render is a pretty complicated question. It's not something that can be answered very, very quickly. But those are some basic render settings for you. If you want to play around with it from there, I think that's a good starting point for you. Yes, absolutely. You're very welcome. Alright, so I'm just going to sketch on this guy a little bit longer here, and then I'm going to bounce on out. So if you guys got any last minute questions, please send them my way, and I'll do my best to answer those to the best of my ability, which unfortunately may not be that great. Longest time I've ever been on a stream. It does not feel like a tutorial. It feels like a class with a talented professor. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I would honestly love to be a professor at a university. I love school. I really do. And I had a ton of fun in college, and it was a really good experience. And I don't need to go back, but I would love to. And I think as a professor, I don't have a master's degree, so probably as some form of an adjunct professor, unless I had credentials large enough to convince a university otherwise. I think that would be pretty neat. I would enjoy that, I think. I enjoy teaching and just kind of at least sharing what I've learned. It's tough because I don't know what all you don't know, but when you're kind of in a more school setting, you can kind of have a better, everybody kind of starts from the same place typically when you take a, let's say, intermediate ZBrush course. It's expected that you took the beginner ZBrush course, etc. That's kind of the idea there. But yeah, I don't know. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now if you're going to merge these back together, my final note to you guys, after you've kind of worked on your lips and played with them. Now that I'm dynameshing these, I want to separate the lips, and I do that so that all touching geometry is of course merged together, as you just saw there. And if those lips were closed and touching, I would no longer have my mouth bag in here, this little hole of geometry for his mouth. And now we have that. Now we can ZRemesh and get some actual clean workable topology in here. Or you could manually remesh. It would be probably wise to add some form of ear here. You can do a quick little something like this. Bad placement. Something really just simple and quick. Typically what I do is I'll just insert an ear mesh that I've already created, so I don't have to worry about it. But just to kind of bring things more into a more finished look there. So just some quick little ears, and then we can duplicate, same process as before ZRemesh. What that's going to do is give us some auto topology here. After that's done thinking, it's probably going to be closer to 10K polys because we are mirroring our ZRemesh here, so always keep that in mind. And of course we're at a little over 10K. And from there I'm just going to step up one subdivision level, project, step up, project, and I'll step up one more time and not project. And just like that, we are there with a good starting place, is what I would call this, to continue working on our character. I always say that this stuff takes a long time, and that's because it does, if you're starting from scratch especially. Like I just did, started from a sphere and just went crazy. And we can, you know, just do some general quick smoothing out here and there. But yeah, no reference, just kind of playing around, seeing what we can do, and talking with you guys and answering as many questions as I could along the way. So I hope that maybe just watching me, you guys were able to get some useful info out of this and everything. But I think that is excuse me, a good stopping point, especially for my very sore throat. Appreciate you guys coming in here always. You guys are great, and always fun to talk to. And hope that you guys learned something today, or maybe learned a few things. But yeah, just kind of playing around, doing a sketch. Also had fun working on our Mercy sculpt up here. Again, this is a concept originally by the artist Zeronis. Check them out on ArtStation, ZERONIS. Awesome artist, much better than me. Check out their work. And I hope to see you guys in the next stream, which will most likely be tomorrow. Rohit says, turn it into an old lady. Talking about this. Absolutely we could. It is kind of starting to lean that direction. But yeah, until next time, guys, I will see you then, hopefully, if you're around. And with that, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for coming in.